After months of criticism from the retail investment community and much deliberation from the company, SoFi is making a big change to their app, updating their SoFi Invest platform. Now, this news broke just 2 days ago, and in this video, we're going to be discussing what it means and what we can expect going forward with SoFi's new app updates. On the SoFi Weekly podcast, we've been discussing this topic for the past 6 months or so, really since the beginning of 2023. How competitors, such as Robinhood primarily, have a much more seamless user experience and how that benefits them when attracting new users. And that SoFi, from an app perspective, is really lagging behind. I mean, the experience is better than a lot of what banks offer, the traditional legacy players, but it makes sense for SoFi to have a much more improved experience that is comparable to tech companies and less comparable to finance companies, because SoFi's entire mantra is to be this tech-focused platform. Now, on January 31st, we discovered some design mock-ups that would be coming for SoFi Invest. This material made it out into the public, and I in fact made a video around this in January. Riley also made an entire video strictly walking through every single screen in that design mock-up, highlighting some of the benefits for the SoFi Invest platform. Now, since that time, however, investors have been focusing on the profitability, on the stock price, on the margins around Galileo and their tech platform. Meanwhile, SoFi as a company has been focused on further vertical integration. We know that they purchased Wyndham Capital very recently. And while all of this is good for investors, it's good for the company, users have not really been seeing many app updates. So there was this big gap from the end of January to now, where recently, a couple of weeks ago, Riley mentioned on Twitter that SoFi's UI continues to be disappointing to watch. And Anthony Noto replied to this thread saying that there is a new user experience that's being worked on for SoFi Invest, and that hopefully this will launch very shortly. Anthony Noto said in this tweet that the overall app design is being worked on, but it's still very early days with no fingers having touched keyboards yet, right? It's still very much in that exploration phase, quoting a much longer timeline until it is launched. So we know as investors to not be expecting an overall app design improvement anytime soon. They're starting to make these improvements, as they always have, piecemeal, small, and then iterative along the way. And with SoFi Invest being really the first step towards that wider overhaul or makeover, as you will. Now, a couple weeks after that, on July 5th, SoFi posted on Twitter from the official account that the Invest platform was getting a makeover from head to toe. I found the phrasing of this tweet to be a little bit funny, because they said, "You asked and we listened." And we know for a fact that many SoFi employees, and in fact some executives in the company, do watch the SoFi Weekly podcast. They do frequently respond to retail investors on Twitter. And overall, with Anthony Noto, he does listen to what investors are saying, and he takes that feedback and criticism all the same. So it seems as though with that phrasing that this is a direct response to some of the more vocal members in our community, which is really cool to see, and I think definitely on brand with just SoFi listening to their users as a whole. Now, later that day on July 5th, Riley put together a short list of the upgrades included in that app, and I'll read through his tweet in this video. So Riley highlights 6 main points in the UI upgrades. Number 1 is an improved portfolio review, which is a redesigned interface for easier portfolio performance analysis. Number 2 is a portfolio diversification visualization. Holdings are now grouped by asset class with clear percentage and total gain indicators. Number 3 are expanded learning resources, a dedicated section that introduces advanced features like options and margins, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. Number 4, we have quick trade execution, so a quick trade button that streamlines the trading process. Number 5, enhanced search capabilities, an improved search functionality for discovering investment opportunities. And number 6, they added dark mode, which I know has been really highly requested by a lot of people on Twitter. So let me just step back and just share some of my high-level first impressions on this change. Number 1, it goes without saying that this is great, even though I have always been more in the camp to argue that the back-end infrastructure changes that they're making are more important than the front-end visualizations. And the reason for this is because the back-end infrastructure changes lower their tech debt, allow them to release more features, and battle on a feature-to-feature basis with a lot of their competitors and iterate much faster than a lot of their competitors. And the reason why this is important is to accelerate that flywheel of cross-selling across their members. However, what's good for investors, what's good for the company, is not necessarily always what's good for the end user. And the fact of the matter is that this front-end change is massively beneficial, quality of life change for a lot of these everyday users of the SoFi app. So personally, I was willing to wait a year, but I know that a lot of people were really frustrated and annoyed with the SoFi app, and I think that this is definitely going to help with user adoption. And as I've been thinking more about it, the context around this move is very interesting. We also know that there's going to be further enhancements to options trading that's coming to SoFi's platform in Q3 in a couple of months, very, very shortly. So along with this new user experience, with this revamp of the SoFi Invest app, and the new functionality around options trading, within a few months, SoFi is going to become a really strong contender in that space to go head to head with Robinhood and potentially try to siphon some of Robinhood's users from them. And the reason I say this is because we know from a user experience perspective that Robinhood is held as a gold standard for a lot of users, given their demographic of just generally younger people and people who make more trades in the market. Options trading is very popular on Robinhood, and as a result of that, it's very fleshed out from a feature set perspective. So if we now put together a full makeover from the SoFi Invest platform, along with level 1 option trading and enhanced options functionality from a feature set perspective, put those together, this could be a very strong combination for retail investors, especially the younger demographics who are predominantly using Robinhood today, for SoFi to start taking some of those members away and enticing them with the SoFi Plus ecosystem, with the cross-selling, with the other suite of products that SoFi has, particularly also bank products, which Robinhood can't compete on. So SoFi has this entire suite of different products, and the app updates and the options trading updates can almost act as this enticing factor to get the new users into their ecosystem so that they can cross-sell them. Now, I'm sure there's going to be a ton of different angles on this personally. That was just my first impressions, was looking at it through the lens of options trading coming very soon, especially because, just to Riley's earlier tweet, he mentioned that some of the UI upgrades are functionality that's geared towards quick trading, options trading, even if it is from a learning and resource perspective. It's going to be interesting to see how it's perceived in another couple of months, not just from a surface level, I like the app, I don't like the app, it's easy to use, it's tough to use, but also, does it enable me to have the same quality of life as I would have on Robinhood? Does it enable me to have the same frequency of trading with minimal headache as I would have on Robinhood, so on and so forth? I'm sure that there's going to be a ton of discussion on this later tonight at the SoFi Weekly Podcast, which is going to be at 10 p.m. Eastern tonight. Definitely make sure to join that. SoFi as a company is deconstructing bear cases every couple of months, it seems, because a lot of the bear cases that we've had in the past, SoFi has addressed them all. And more recently, this was one of the issues that a lot of people were critiquing SoFi is that they are this tech-oriented company, this tech-savvy company that doesn't really upgrade their tech from a user experience perspective. And we're now starting to see that rolled out, number one, in SoFi Invest, but more importantly, validated from Anthony Noto himself that this is going to be a phased approach that's iterative, that's going to affect SoFi's entire platform end to end. And the final point I'll say on that is it's going to be really interesting to see, for me, in future quarters, how SoFi Invest's growth rates from a member set perspective increase. We know that Relay has been their fastest growing app, and Relay has really no barriers to it. I'm curious to see if SoFi Invest is going to pick up in terms of their growth rate to sort of validate in our minds that this was in fact the case, that people were not joining as a result of the app updates. That remains to be seen. For right now, this is the Fundamentals Investing Podcast. Thank you so much for listening.